Hi, this is Dr. Neil Bompany. Welcome to Arranging 101, and we're here to talk about arranging music. Please take the time to like and subscribe to my channel if you get anything out of the videos, and please visit my website at www.bompanymusicco.com. If you register there, I'll notify you of new lessons and any freebies I may have to share with you. Now, this video has been created for those who are just getting interested in arranging and have not yet studied music theory. If you've already taken music theory courses, you may not need this. However, I might caution high school students. If you've taken an AP music theory in high school, you probably covered the equivalent of maybe one semester of college theory, so this course can help you. Even if you do have a decent understanding of theory, please watch the video in case there are things you don't understand. Now, this video is not going to teach music theory. It will show you the things you must learn in order to have a working knowledge of theory, and I'll point you in directions of how to do that. There's no one video that's going to be able to cover music theory in just a short time. First of all arrangers must have a good understanding of music theory. Music theory is the study of the conventions that explain how music works. I use conventions instead of the word rules because most rules can be broken once a person understands those rules. This video will help you understand what you should know. Eventually, if you get to study Bach chorales, you'll start to understand these conventions. I'm going to use the word rules from now on, but understand, when I use rules, I mean conventions. Even Bach broke the rules in many of his works. However, every time he breaks them, there's a valid reason. If you know the rules and you look at Bach's mistakes, quote unquote, you'll see how he does it and gets away with it because he's really not breaking the rules. I'm going to assume that if you're listening, you have some musical background, but maybe you're just beginning to explore the world of arranging. Maybe you're interested in writing for a group, whether it's a four-piece rock band or it's an orchestra or a marching band, jazz band, whatever. What I will outline will get you prepared for the work ahead. With this in mind, I'm going to outline the most important aspects of music theory. Now, before I do this, I want to take note of a very important website. Please go to www.musictheory.net and bookmark that page. This site is free for desktop or laptop computers, but for a few dollars, I'm thinking about $3 or so, you can get access to an app that has animated lessons. That's only for iPads or iPhones, by the way. There's no Android lessons. The exercises are customizable, and you can move at your own pace. I've used the site for college music major theory classes, and if you spend the time there, you can learn most of the basics of music theory. You need to practice these skills on a regular basis. The sooner you master them, the sooner you'll be arranging. Let me make sure you understood what I was talking about. The app is only for iPhones and iPads, but the site is open to all Windows or Mac, whatever. All right, let's talk about step one. Basically reading and writing notes. Before I do this, I want to say something. When we write something down on a manuscript paper, we're writing notes. That's the printed symbol on a piece of paper. When those notes are read by a performer and they become sound, we hear pitches. Let me just sum that up quickly. We write notes, we hear pitches. These words are used interchangeably by many musicians, and I think we should get words right. Okay, what do you need to know? First, you need to be able to read both treble and bass clef fluently. Get used to reading at least up to 4 ledger lines above and below each staff. If you're weak on one of these, I suggest working on it at musictheory.net. And from this point on, if I say work on something, it's going to mean go to musictheory.net, unless I state otherwise. Okay, also, know how to alter notes properly with sharps, flats, naturals, as well as double sharps, and double flats. These are called accidentals. I don't know who gave them the name because they're put there purposely, but they're called accidentals. Okay, know your scales. Know your major and minor scales, including all 3 forms of the minor scale. Also know how to properly notate a chromatic scale. Chromatic scales, for the most part, as we go up, we use sharps. As we come down, we use flats. Naturals are used in both cases, of course. Okay, you also need to know your key signatures. You must be able to identify and write key signatures quickly. When you work on an instrumental arrangement, you'll be writing parts for instruments that may be in 3 or 4 different keys at the same time. Talk about an orchestra, and you're talking about even more than that. Understanding the basics of rhythm. First, you have to understand the basics of note and rest values, how they relate to each other. Know the proper division and subdivision of notes and rests. It's especially important to know how to write them properly. I plan on creating a separate video on rhythm pretty soon. Also, know what a dot does to a note value. Know when to use dots and when to use ties. This takes time and experience. As I talk about actually arranging, you'll see how I use dots and ties interchangeably and sometimes together. Also understand at least the common time signatures: 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, 2/2 or cut time, 3/8, 6/8, 9/8, 12/8. You're going to need to understand the difference between simple and compound time signatures. And again, in my rhythm video, I'll talk about that. Tempo. Know how to use proper tempo markings? For arranging, we need to be precise. Don't use terms like allegro, adagio, etc. Use metronome markings. I mean, we could do that nowadays. It's very simple. Okay, step 2, harmonic knowledge. And we're talking about working with groups of pitches that sound at the same time usually. First, intervals. As an arranger, you must understand intervals. You must be able to read them, write them, and hear them. An interval is the distance between any two pitches. This step of the process is very time-consuming. You will need to practice these intervals until you mastered them. Let's say you're looking at a melody that's written for piano. When you write that for a trumpet, each note you write for the trumpet has to be a major second above the piano note. If you're writing for alto saxes, we're talking about a major sixth above. For a French horn, perfect fifth above. You need to know these intervals. And you really have to have these intervals down cold in order to understand chords. All right, we're going to move on to that next. Okay, once you've got intervals down, you need to understand chords. Chords must be understood beginning with major, minor, diminished, and augmented chords, the basic 4 chord categories. And then we're going to add sevenths to all those chords. You also need to know how to write the chords in open and closed positions. Okay, I'm not going to teach this now, but these are things you need to know. Step 3, actually writing. Okay, once you know your chords, you know your intervals, you need to be able to write harmonic progressions. There are many common chord progressions that you'll see over and over again. You must understand how to write these progressions, keeping in mind smooth voice leading. Once you understand the basic chord progressions, you can learn chord substitutions. Chord substitutions give the harmony more color and interest. Learning how to use them and when to use them takes practice and experience. All right, moving on to non-chord tones. You need to understand all of the non-chord tones, things like suspensions, anticipations, passing tone, neighbor tones, etc. Once you have a good understanding of this, you'll move on to extended chords of 9th, 11th, 13th, okay? You must understand chords completely before you begin to arrange. When you arrange chords, you must be careful to make sure you're voicing them so that they'll blend within the timbres of the band. You can't write a 3-part chord with the root and the fifth and the trumpets and the third and the altos, saxes rather. We'll cover this more in orchestration lessons. Okay, now notice here the 4 little harmonic progressions here. I'm demonstrating the non-chord tones. I want you to hear each of these. The first one is just a 1-4-5-1 progression, right? The next one I add some non-chord tones as noticed there. And then the third one, so I'm going to play each of these in a row. Okay, so I'll play the first one, then the second one, third one, fourth one. Next, understanding phrases and cadences is very important, especially when writing for wind instruments to understand phrasing. I've written a simple 2-phrase melody here that you can see. First 4 measures and then a half cadence, what we call a half cadence. This kind of cadence needs to be resolved, as you'll hear. Once we get to the last measure, you'll hear its final cadence. Okay, I can call it a perfect authentic cadence, but it's a final cadence. Let's hear it alone, just the melody. And you'll hear how when we get to that 4th measure, it doesn't sound like you could just stop there. It needs to move on. All right? Let's hear that. All right, now let's hear that. I'm going to put some harmony to it. Here we go. I need to step back and talk about phrases again. Now, phrases in the melody, as you can see in this melody here, there are two phrases, right? And that is one thing. Phrasing, when we talk about phrasing for wind instruments, that is a little bit different. You have to be able to tell a wind instrument where they're going to start and where they're going to end because they have to take breaths. That's a different kind of phrasing. But understand, we'll talk about those differences as we talk about arranging. Anyway, let's going on to the next step. Writing a good melody. Now, as an arranger, we're usually working with melodies written by others, but you need to be able to create counter melodies or even come up with your own melodies at times if you want to write like a variation based on the harmony. Writing a good melody is an art form in and of itself. It takes some time and understanding. You have to know all your scales, especially how to use the different forms of the minor scale. And there are many important things you need to know when writing an effective melody, but I can't cover these here. Eventually, you'll begin to hear melodies in your head that follow the rules of good melodic writing because it'll just come to you. Until then, you have to practice creating your own melodies. I might suggest there's a video out there, and I don't have it. If I find it, I'll put it in the notes below. Somebody was giving a little demonstration video on how John Williams approaches melody, how he has these two-phrase melodies and how he hits the climactic point in the second phrase, and it's one of his trademarks. You might want to find that. If I could find it, I'll put it below. Okay, let's sum up what I've talked about today. To be a good arranger, you must have a good understanding of music theory. Music theory can be defined as conventions that are used by composers and arrangers to create music that the listener can understand. These conventional rules were set down by composers like Bach and Handel. Over the years, other composers have found ways of expanding them, bending them, and even breaking them. But please remember, to break the rules, you must first understand them. Now, it's up to the individual, meaning you, to take the time to master these basics. The topics I covered in this video often take several years of college courses to understand. However, a motivated person can learn this faster. Still, there are no fast and easy ways of learning theory. Forget about those. You see these videos, learn theory in 15 minutes. That's insane, okay? It takes regular practice over and over until a person masters the skills. If you want to be a good arranger, you got to be able to write without sitting down at a piano and having to figure out every little thing that you might be hearing. All right, that's ear training as well, and that's a whole other topic we'll talk about in another video. All right, again, if you liked this video, if you got something out of it, please like and subscribe. Please visit my website at www.bonpanimusicco.com and register there for freebies and for notices, etc., and I will try to keep you appraised of things there. I really appreciate you listening to my videos. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the next one.